Many women in their 60s begin to believe that waking up tired is simply part of aging, something that comes along quietly with the passing years, like lighter sleep, earlier mornings, or a body that no longer responds the way it used to. But what if that persistent fatigue you feel when you wake up has far less to do with your age than you've been led to believe, and far more to do with something subtle that has been happening night after night without calling attention to itself? I want to invite you to do something very simple with me, something that will take less than 25 seconds, but that can reveal a pattern your body has been trying to show you for a long time. Because at this stage of life, your body communicates differently. It doesn't shout, it signals, and most of these signals are often ignored or misunderstood. By the end of this simple test, you'll recognize which pattern your body is following, even if no one has ever explained it to you before. So take a moment and don't try to analyze too much. Just notice what feels true for you. When you wake up in the morning, before you reach for your phone, before you sit up, before you even fully open your eyes, what is the first sensation you become aware of in your body? Is it a deep heaviness, as if your body didn't fully rest, or perhaps a stiffness, especially in your back, shoulders, or legs? Or maybe it's something more internal, like a quiet sense of unease, a subtle anxiety, or even a lack of motivation to begin the day. Now think about this: how long does it take for you to feel like yourself again, not just able to get out of bed, but truly clear, steady, and present? Does that feeling come naturally within a few minutes, or do you find that your energy takes a long time to settle, sometimes stretching into the entire morning, leaving you feeling as if the day has already started with a weight you didn't choose? And one more thing, when you think about your sleep, do you feel like it restores you, or does it feel fragmented, as if you're waking up several times during the night, adjusting, thinking, drifting in and out, but never quite reaching that deep sense of rest that leaves you renewed? What most people don't realize is that the way you answered these questions already reveals a very specific pattern, and that pattern can explain why even a full night in bed doesn't translate into real energy the next day. Step 2. Most women, especially those over 60, hear that poor sleep is simply a natural consequence of hormonal changes, lighter sleep cycles, or the body slowing down. While there is some truth to these factors, they rarely explain the whole picture and, more importantly, often distract from a deeper pattern that develops silently over time. Because the real issue in many cases is not just how long you sleep, but how your body is experiencing the night as a whole, and whether it ever truly enters a state of restoration, or if it remains in a subtle state of alert even while you appear to be resting. As the years go by, your nervous system becomes more sensitive to accumulated stress, not just emotional stress, but physical and mental patterns that have been repeating for decades, and instead of fully relaxing at night, your body may stay partially on, holding tension in your muscles, maintaining shallow breathing, and preventing you from reaching the deeper stages of sleep where true recovery happens. This is why you might spend 7, 8, or even 9 hours in bed and still wake up feeling heavy, foggy, or unmotivated, because your body didn't actually disconnect, it simply paused lightly without ever going into full repair mode. And there's another layer that often goes unnoticed, which is the fragmentation of sleep, those small awakenings during the night that you may not even fully remember, moments when your body shifts, your mind activates briefly, or your breathing pattern changes, all of which interrupt the natural rhythm your body needs to restore energy. Over time, this creates a cycle where your nights become less restorative, your mornings become slower and heavier, and your energy throughout the day never quite stabilizes, leading many women to believe that this is just how life feels now, when in reality, it's a pattern that can be identified and, more importantly, changed. If you find this type of explanation helpful and want to better understand how your body is changing and what you can do about it in a clear and objective way, subscribe to the channel, because that's exactly what we explore here, with a calm and practical approach that respects your time and experience. Step 3. Now that you understand that the issue may not be how long you sleep, but how your body behaves during the night, I want to guide you through a slightly deeper version of that initial test, something you can mentally revisit, or even try again tomorrow morning with more awareness, because the more clearly you notice these patterns, the easier it becomes to understand what your body is actually asking for. So imagine yourself waking up again, but this time, instead of immediately reacting, you simply observe, almost as if you're listening to your body from the inside. Notice your breathing first, not by changing it, but by feeling it. Is it slow and deep, moving naturally through your abdomen, or is it shorter, higher in your chest, slightly irregular, as if your body never fully settled during the night? Because breathing patterns often reveal whether your system truly relaxed or remained in a state of low-level tension. Then bring your attention to your muscles, especially your jaw, your shoulders, your neck, and even your hands. Are they soft and relaxed, or do you notice subtle tightness? Maybe your jaw slightly clenched, your shoulders carrying a quiet weight, or your hands not fully at ease, because these small signs often indicate that your body stayed partially alert while you were sleeping. Now shift your awareness to your mind, not the thoughts themselves but the state of your mind. Does it feel calm and clear, or does it already seem active, as if it picked up from where it left off the night before, gently pulling you into concerns, plans, or unresolved thoughts before your day has even begun? And finally, ask yourself something very simple but very revealing. Do you feel like your body wants to get up, or do you feel like you have to convince it to move? Because that difference, subtle as it may seem, tells you whether your energy is naturally available or if it needs to be forced. What makes this test powerful is not any single answer, but the combination of all of them, because together, they form a pattern that reflects how deeply your body is resting, or how much it is holding on even during the night. And in the next step, we're going to start interpreting these patterns in a very practical way so you can begin to recognize exactly which signals apply to you and what they actually mean. Step 4. Now that you've gone through this deeper observation, the most important thing is not to judge what you felt, but to understand what it reveals, because your body is not failing you, it is communicating, and once you learn how to read these signals, what once felt confusing starts to become very clear. If your breathing felt shallow or irregular when you woke up, especially if it stayed high in your chest, this often points to a nervous system that did not fully relax during the night, meaning your body remained in a state of low-level alert, even while you were asleep, which limits how deeply you can recover. If you notice tension in your jaw, shoulders, or neck, even if it was subtle, this is another sign that your body has been holding on, maintaining muscular engagement when it should have been releasing, and over time this prevents the kind of physical restoration that leaves you feeling light and ready in the morning. If your mind already felt active the moment you became aware, gently pulling you into thoughts, concerns, or planning, this suggests that your mental activity is not fully shutting down at night, and instead of moving through deeper restorative phases, your sleep becomes lighter, more fragmented, and less effective. And if you recognize that feeling of having to convince your body to get up, rather than feeling a natural readiness to move, this is one of the clearest indicators that your energy is not being fully replenished, because true rest doesn't require effort to begin the day. It creates a quiet sense of willingness, even if the body is not as fast or as strong as it once was. What's important here is that these patterns rarely appear in isolation. Most women experience a combination of 2 or 3 of them, and together they form a very specific profile of how your body is managing, or struggling to manage, the night. And this is where many misunderstand what's happening, because they focus on surface solutions, like trying to sleep longer, changing pillows, or adjusting small habits, without realizing that the root of the issue is often deeper, connected to how the body regulates tension, breathing, and mental activity over time. Step 5. At this point, you might be starting to recognize yourself in some of these patterns, and that's important because what keeps this cycle going is not a single big problem, but a series of small, almost invisible habits that reinforce the way your body behaves at night. One of the most common mistakes is trying to fix tiredness by going to bed earlier or staying in bed longer, believing that more time will naturally lead to more rest. But if your body is not entering a truly relaxed state, those extra hours often become light, fragmented sleep, which can actually leave you feeling heavier in the morning rather than more restored. Another pattern that often goes unnoticed is carrying the day into the night, not in an obvious way, but through subtle mental continuation, where your mind keeps processing conversations, responsibilities, or concerns long after you've laid down, creating a background activity that prevents your system from fully switching off. There is also the habit of accepting physical tension as normal, especially in the shoulders, neck, or lower back, because over the years, your body adapts to holding that tension, and what once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. But during sleep, that same tension limits circulation, restricts breathing patterns, and reduces the depth of your rest. And then there's something even more subtle, which is the way your breathing has adapted over time, often becoming shorter and higher without you realizing it. Especially if you've spent years in states of mild stress or constant responsibility, and this kind of breathing quietly signals your body to stay alert, even when you're trying to rest. Many women also rely on routines that seem helpful on the surface, like watching television until they fall asleep or using their phone as a way to relax. But these habits tend to keep the mind lightly stimulated, preventing that natural transition into deeper, more restorative sleep. What makes all of this challenging is that none of these behaviors feel extreme. They feel normal, familiar, and even comforting, which is exactly why they continue, night after night, reinforcing the same pattern of waking up without real energy. But once you start to see these patterns clearly, something shifts, because instead of trying random solutions, You begin to understand what actually needs to change and, more importantly, what does not. Step 6. Now that you've seen the patterns and the hidden habits that reinforce them, we can finally look at what ties everything together. And the reason is simpler than it seems, but often completely overlooked, because it doesn't come from a single habit. It comes from the way your body has learned to exist over time. The real reason many women wake up tired even after spending enough hours in bed is that the body never fully shifts into a state of deep restoration. It remains partially alert, holding on just enough to prevent true recovery. And this is not something that happens overnight. It is something that develops gradually over years of adaptation. Your body is designed to move between states: alert during the day, deeply relaxed at night. But when this rhythm is disrupted for long periods, whether due to stress, responsibility, emotional load, or simply years of staying on, the body begins to treat that alertness as normal, even when it should be resting. So instead of fully letting go at night, your system stays in a kind of in-between state, not fully awake but not fully relaxed either, which means your muscles don't completely release, your breathing doesn't fully deepen, and your mind doesn't entirely quiet down. This is why sleep becomes lighter, more fragmented, and less restorative, even if you are technically asleep for many hours, because rest is not only about being unconscious, it is about how deeply your body allows itself to reset. And over time, this creates a cycle that feeds itself, where poor restoration leads to lower energy during the day, which then makes the body more likely to stay in that same semi-alert state the following night, repeating the pattern again and again. What's important to understand is that this is not a failure of your body, it is a form of protection. Your system has learned to stay slightly on guard, even when it is no longer necessary, and it continues doing so because it hasn't been given a clear signal that it is safe to fully relax. And if, as you listen to this, you begin to recognize yourself in these patterns, in the way your body holds on, in the way your nights feel incomplete, it can be helpful to put that into words, because often what we name becomes easier to understand and change. So if you feel comfortable, share in the comments what your mornings have been like lately, whether it's heaviness, lack of clarity, or that sense of not feeling fully restored, because this kind of awareness is often the first step toward shifting the pattern. Step 7. Once this pattern becomes part of your nights, it doesn't stay limited to how you wake up. It slowly begins to shape how your entire day feels, often in ways that are so subtle and gradual that they're mistaken for normal aging, rather than recognized as signs of incomplete restoration. You may notice that your energy doesn't truly drop all at once, but instead feels inconsistent, where some moments of the day seem manageable, and others feel heavier than they should, as if your body is constantly trying to catch up with something it never fully recovered from. There's also a kind of mental fog that can appear, not necessarily confusion, but a slower clarity, where thoughts take a bit longer to organize, decisions feel slightly more effortful, and your mind doesn't feel as sharp or as steady as it once did, especially in the earlier hours of the day. Emotionally, this can show up as a lower threshold for stress, where small situations feel more draining than they used to, or where your patience feels shorter, not because you've changed as a person, but because your system is operating with less available energy. Physically, the body often reflects this through subtle stiffness, reduced motivation to move, or that familiar sensation of needing time to get going, as if your body requires a gradual push into the day, rather than naturally stepping into it. What makes this particularly important is that many women interpret these signs as something they simply have to accept, believing that this is just how the body behaves at this stage of life, when in reality these are not just signs of age, they are signals of a system that has not been fully restored overnight. And when this is misunderstood, the solutions tend to focus on compensating during the day, whether through more caffeine, more effort, or simply pushing through the fatigue, instead of addressing what is happening during the night, where the real reset is supposed to occur. But once you begin to see that these daily experiences are connected to the quality of your rest, and not just the quantity, something shifts, because instead of adapting to the fatigue, you start to question the pattern behind it. Step 8. Before we move into what you can begin to do differently, if this content is helping you understand your body in a clearer and more respectful way, taking a moment to like the video is a simple gesture that helps this kind of information reach more women who may be experiencing the same patterns, often without realizing that there is a way to look at it differently. Now, when it comes to changing this cycle, the most important thing to understand is that your body does not respond well to force, especially at this stage of life. It responds to consistency, safety, and gradual signals that it is allowed to let go. So instead of trying to fix everything at once or introducing complex routines, the first step is much simpler. It's about creating a clear transition between your day and your night, because for many women that transition no longer exists. The day simply flows into the night without a real shift in state. This can begin with something as subtle as reducing mental input in the hour before bed, allowing your mind to slow down naturally, rather than continuing to process information until the moment you try to sleep, because your nervous system needs time to recognize that it is safe to move out of alertness. Your breathing also plays a quiet but powerful role here, and without forcing anything, simply becoming aware of slower, deeper breathing as you lie down can begin to signal your body that it no longer needs to hold on, that it can start releasing tension instead of maintaining it. Another important element is how you relate to those moments when you wake up during the night. Instead of reacting with frustration or immediately engaging your thoughts, gently returning to a sense of physical awareness, your breath, your body, can help prevent that brief awakening from turning into extended mental activity. And in the morning, rather than rushing to get up or immediately stimulating your mind, giving yourself a few moments to reconnect with your body, noticing your breathing, your sensations, can begin to retrain how your system transitions back into the day. These are not dramatic changes, and that's exactly why they work, because your body is not looking for intensity. It is looking for consistency and reassurance, small signals repeated over time that gradually allow it to move back into a deeper, more restorative rhythm. And as these patterns begin to shift, what you'll often notice is not just better mornings, but a more stable sense of energy throughout your entire day, a feeling that your body is working with you again, rather than something you need to push through. See you in the next video on the channel.